It's Friday, the 11th of October, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes, 5 big stories today. Let's get going with story number 1. A busy day in Canberra yesterday with the Albanese government announcing an overhaul of the mergers regime and China dropping tariffs on lobsters.
Starting with mergers, Treasurer Jim Chalmers called it a really important economic reform as he introduced legislation to scrap the existing voluntary merger notification regime and introduced mandatory notification where companies involved in mergers meet certain thresholds. That would mean all supermarket mergers, for example, would spark a review by the competition watchdog. The new laws will also allow the Treasurer to designate high-risk parts of the economy where the ACCC will be able to review all mergers regardless of whether they meet key thresholds. Elsewhere, Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles' Chief of Staff, Jo Tarnowski, claims she was bullied out of her job and barred from her office after complaining about colleagues' undermining behaviour. Ms. Tarnowski alleges her boss effectively sacked her without warning in a phone call on April 30, according to The Guardian. Mr. Marles says he is satisfied he has upheld his responsibilities under the Ministerial Code of Conduct in his treatment of his former Chief of Staff.
And I mentioned lobsters before, Sean. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang and afterwards said Beijing will restart imports of Australia's live rock lobster trade by the end of this year.
The major breakthrough clears the last of more than $20 billion in trade bans introduced by China. Mr. Albanese said the imports will restart in time for the Chinese New Year celebrations, be a big boost to export businesses in Australia. Mr. Qiang was upbeat on Australia, saying the relationship had continued to move forward. They were both at the ASEAN summit in Laos. Others there include US State Secretary Antony Blinken, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, new Japanese PM Shigeru Ishiba, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Yeah, that is good news. Now, try and get your head around the numbers in story number 2, Sean. The value of residential real estate in Australia has pushed beyond $11 trillion for the first time, up by $900 billion over the last year.
It would have been more, but for slow growth in home values over the September quarter, just 1% across the nation, according to CoreLogic, taking the annual pace of price rises to 6.7%. Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth dwelling values are currently at a record high. Certainly the market is cooling, though. Days on market has increased from 29 to 32 days. Vendor discounting is steady at about 4%. And the number of listings is above the historical average. For the current week, which ends on Saturday night, 2,621 homes are going to auction across the capital cities, the 6th busiest week of the year.
Story number 3, some of the world's biggest exchange-traded fund ETF providers have started offering defence ETFs on the ASX, capitalising on heightened international tensions and booming military spending.
Global X and Beta Shares this week launched defence ETFs and VanEck listed its version last month. Global defence spending has climbed for 9 consecutive years, reaching a record $2.4 trillion last year, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. By 2030, that's expected to hit $3.1 trillion. Of course, that means there's an investment opportunity, albeit one with some uncomfortable undertones for some people. VanEck launched a global defence fund in Europe last year. It's replicated it on the ASX now. Beta Shares ETF provides exposure to up to 60 companies which derive at least half their revenues from the development and manufacture of military and defence equipment. Lockheed Martin's one, BAE Systems, General Dynamics, Palantir Technologies.
On to story number 4 now. It looks like a May federal election is a pretty good bet after the government yesterday officially brought forward the 2025 budget.
The release of the 2025 schedule for federal parliament shows the budget, which is normally the first Tuesday in May, will be handed down on March 25. Now, a bit of a precedent for this. Both the 2019 and 2022 budgets were brought forward to allow a May election. In both cases, the election was announced after the budget. Once Parliament's dissolved and writs are issued for the election, there's 33 days needed before a poll can take place. If we follow the timetable outlined yesterday, no reasons why we shouldn't. The earliest an election could be held is May 3, latest May 17.
Last one, story number 5. Here's a novel idea, Sean. Portugal is planning to turn itself into a low tax haven for young people by offering a decade of tax breaks to people starting their careers in the country in an effort to halt a growing brain drain.
Love the idea. The country's centre-right government wants to reduce the income tax burden on young people for 10 years, including a first year in which no tax is paid. The initiative underlines the urgency of reversing a debilitating outflow of young people who are leaving one of the poorest economies in Western Europe in search of better paid jobs abroad, according to the Financial Times. Portuguese Prime Minister Luís Montenegro was due to announce the plan overnight. Still got to get it through the Parliament, of course. The government is seeking to tackle a combination of high taxes, low wages and high housing costs that are driving many highly educated young people out of the country. Mr. Montenegro wants to keep more people in the country and he wants a tax system that is more youth-friendly.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 11th of October, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 business news by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.